Good evening. I declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 18th of February 2025 held in Council Chambers at Level 2, 388 Hay Street, Subiaco, open at 5:31 p.m. Welcome everyone. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of this land, and I recognise their ongoing connection to our land, waterways and sky. So I'll take attendances now. We have one councillor on approved leave, that's Councillor De Vries. We have Councillor Mark Burns and Councillor Rick Powell attending electronically with prior approval, and they've both declared that they can maintain confidentiality during any confidential parts of the meeting. And all other elected members are here in person and accounted for, so welcome to you all. I see you've got the entire executive leadership team here also. Welcome to you. And I see that you're supported by various staff members who will call upon as needed. So, disclosures of interest. I understand there's, I'll ask if there's any leave of absence requests. Usually I know beforehand, but is anyone seeking approved leave? Nope, good. Disclosures. Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor McMullen. Yes, I've got a declaration of interest. I, Penny O'Connor, wish to declare an interest in item C5, the self-supporting loan for WMRC, to be considered in today's meeting. It's a declaration of impartiality pursuant to clause 22.2 of the Code of Conduct for Council members, committee members and candidates. The nature of my interest is that I'm the City of Subiaco's current delegate on WMRC, and I will consider this item on its merits.
Thank you. And I take it there's no other disclosures, so we can move on. There were no public questions previously taken on notice. No public questions have been submitted, so we'll move on to public statement time. We've got a single statement that is going to be made by Greg Wrighton of 21 Darben Crescent, Subiaco. Mr. Wrighton, a statement on C1. Sure can.
Yep. Okay, you can hear me now. Okay, this is in relation to item C1, proposed amendment number 4 to the local planning scheme number 5, short-term rental accommodation, STRA, with an example of our experience of a proposed change of use at 19 Darben Crescent, which is just next door. We have lived at 21 Darben Crescent for over 6 years, and 19 Darben Terrace, Darben Crescent I should say, has been a long-term rental house for in excess of 10 years without any major issues over that time. We are concerned that not all residents within the immediate surrounding area of 19 Darben Crescent have been advised of the impact on residents of an unhosted short-term rental accommodation of this type. 19 Darben Crescent is a large 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house capable of housing more than 8 people, and which also has a rooftop terrace overlooking Meadows Lane, which comes off Darben Crescent. The main potential issue is noise from the property, which includes street noise from cars coming and going throughout the night, with slamming car doors and voices heard due to the residents' houses' main bedrooms essentially being situated on the street. Additionally, the property has a terrace rooftop which overlooks Meadows Lane, and residents on the other side of the lane which they overlook are concerned there could be considerable noise from people socialising and partying on the terrace. The immediate surrounding area is one of relative high density, with 2 to 3 level residential houses and 4 to 5 level buildings on Roberts Road and Centro Ave, which back onto Meadows Lane. As a result of the building congestion, any noise in the area tends to be exacerbated by the higher levels of the buildings and the noise reverberating between the buildings. I think you'll sort of understand that noise in recently developed areas has a greater problem than the older areas where the noise is less of a problem due to the houses being set back further, boundary fences used, and front and rear yards being full of vegetation to limit the noise. Consideration for DAs for unhosted STRAs within the newer, more highly developed areas of Subiaco, I think, should be done on a case-by-case basis, with all residents within the immediate area being made aware of the negative impacts to their amenity from accommodation of this type. Darben Crescent, Meadows Lane are quiet streets, and we would not like to have our amenity impacted upon by a change in use of an existing established family home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there were no approved petitions or deputations. I will look to councillors now to approve previous minutes of meetings, specifically the minutes of the ordinary council meeting of the 10th of December 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept those minutes? And just confirming we'll be voting by show of hands given the mix of in-person and electronic attendance this evening. Do I have Councillor White? Thank you. And Councillor O'Connor. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Very good. Okay, announcements. Look, I'll probably skip it for tonight. It's a lonely gallery, and we've caught up the last 4 weeks, so I think councillors, you're up to date. If there's big announcements, we'll get that through by other channels, but I think we can just move on to the agenda. We've got several items, councillors, that we could potentially include in an en-bloc vote, which means that there's no special voting requirements and there's no amendments or alternatives submitted. The possible en-bloc motion would consist of items C2, C6 and C7. Does anyone want to pull any of those items from the en-bloc vote? I'll take that as a no, so I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the en-bloc resolution. Councillor Kosovich moving, and I think I saw Councillor Johnston seconding. I'll put that to the vote. Yeah, I think I saw a fuzzy hand go up on the screen as well. Yeah. Okay, that's carried unanimously, which means that the en-bloc vote on C2, C6 and C7 are carried as recommended by staff without debate. So we can now move on to the remaining officer reports or agenda items. First up, C1, the proposed amendment number 4 to local planning scheme number 5 relating to short-term rental accommodation. We've got the officer recommendation as circulated in the agenda. We've got an amendment from Councillor Burns as published. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Kosovich moving, thank you. Do I have a seconder? For the officer recommendation, Councillor Jones, thank you. Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and thanking planning staff for their good work with this state government initiative. In line with the officer recommendation, I support the proposed amendment number 4 to planning scheme number 5, that is short-term rental accommodation, be council's position on the matter. Reasons. This comes off the back of the state government's planning reform agenda, which includes changes to how short-term rental accommodation is regulated. Amendment number 4 will align LPS 5 with the LPS regulations. The main implication for the city is that the unhosted STRAs will now require development approval if they operate for more than 90 days within a 12-month period. Hosted STRAs, on the other hand, are exempt from the need for development approval and will be permitted in all zones within LPS 5. Currently, there are 151 active STRA registrations within the city, 121 of which are unhosted and 30 of which are hosted. The STRA register will allow the city to access accurate data on STRAs, assisting in their management, including complaints. The city hasn't faced significant issues or complaints about these short-term dwellings, indicating that they are well integrated into the community. It further aligns with the city's local planning strategy, which seeks to encourage tourist accommodation and to promote the city as a unique, attractive and well-serviced destination for visitors. Other benefits to be realised include a significant increase in short-term accommodation at a critical high-demand time for rental housing in the city. It will incentivise vacant rooms and homes becoming available, and in doing so, it will provide those homeowners or occupants with an alternative means of income that will in no small way help offset the affordability crisis in our community, impacting the necessities of day-to-day living. It will also see our retailers benefit from this discretionary spending and be a boon for our local economy. My position and recommendation is that under Section 75 of the Planning Development Act, Council resolves to not amend LPS 5 as it simply does not need to be amended. Accordingly, Council should seek approval from the Minister to advertise Amendment number 4 without modifications. This aligns LPS 5 with the LPS regulations, ensuring clarity. I commend it to you.
Thanks, Councillor Kosovich. Councillor Jones. By reserve, you mean you'll talk later? Oh, there's no official provision in the rules that allows someone to reserve and talk later. Are you planning on talking, or did you just want a second to get it on the table? Okay, thank you. Okay, well, just so we know what we're debating, there is an amendment, so now would probably be a good time to test that and see if it's got support from Council. Councillor Burns, I take it you'll still want to move the amendment that you've submitted. Do we have a seconder? It was more rhetorical. I'll look for a seconder for your amendment, and then we'll hear from you. Councillor White, thank you. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen and councillors. I couldn't be briefer on this one. The question that I have is, why wouldn't we advertise? Now, I'm delighted to hear from anybody that would think informing people that are in the affected in areas surrounding applications, why we wouldn't tell them. And if anybody can tell me why it would be deleterious to tell them, I'm happy to hear from it. But as I started, I have nothing more to add than why we got a problem with telling people that there's an application that they may not consider affects their amenity. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Okay. Yeah, I'm afraid my seconding argument is not terribly elaborate either, other than just to say that, it seems to me the threshold for unhosted is still, could be, considerable in terms of effects that these arrangements can have on neighbours. It's been interesting to receive a statement today from a member of the public, or a resident of the city, and to express concerns, which is essentially about the lack of advice given to neighbours in that particular circumstance. And again, it does feel like a bit of a no-brainer as to why we shouldn't at least advise people what's going on. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Any speakers against the amendment? Yep, Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not support the amendment to be made for unhosted STRAs being approved, as I believe there is simply no justification to do so, and moreover that it would place an unrealistic burden on staff to do so. I further believe advertising unhosted STRA needlessly risks stigmatising applicants and may act as a disincentive for them to participate in the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just ask a question, and look, I could have asked this last week or by email during the week, but I didn't, but here we are. Director of Development Services, can you just talk us through the difference between what's proposed in this amendment and what's already provided for in the city's local planning policy 7.3, which, as I understand it from your officer comment, already provides that where there are potential significant amenity impacts on nearby residential areas or neighbours, as determined by the city, those types of proposals can and are already publicly advertised. What's the difference in practice between the current policy position and what the proposed amendment submitted by Councillor Burns would achieve?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. The simple answer to that is that advertising will be mandatory. So even if there is, even if we do have an application come in which looks relatively simple and straightforward, we would still have to advertise that application. It will be a requirement under our scheme, and it will be advertised to adjoining properties. So The difference is that with the discretionary land use, staff can make a decision depending on the proposal on whether or not it's advertised. More likely than not, it generally is. However, there might be some circumstances where a reduction in red tape, reducing the time frame from 90 to 60 days or even less, might be considered appropriate. So it's a mandatory advertising, which is the answer to your question.
Thank you for that. A follow-up. The policy position, though, as I understand it, is that there's a threshold question. It's not whether we want to cut red tape or not. It's whether there's going to be potential significant amenity impacts on nearby residential areas. If we accept the proposition that unhosted short-term residential accommodation can potentially have significant amenity impacts, how do you make a determination of what proposed short-term rental accommodation will and what proposed short-term residential accommodation won't? And I understand that the policy applies across the suite of potential developments that can come across your desk, but we're talking about Airbnbs and we're talking about the city of Subiaco. So I can envisage a situation where you have an Airbnb on a farm stay, for example. There's no neighbours nearby. There's not going to be any amenity impacts, but in the city of Subiaco, there's going to be neighbours. It's a urban area. That's why I'm asking what the practical difference is between the policy position and what we'd have if the amendment was carried.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, another good question. Depending on the application, considerations will include whether there's going to be any impact on parking, the configuration of the layout, and whether accessing that property might have a greater impact on neighbours. The number of people who might be ordinarily using that as a short-term premises. So parking scale, location, and any other design elements that might come into it. So if you're going to have a short-term rental accommodation that can only, perhaps have two people, in there, if it's an apartment or something along the lines, might be a bit different to a house hosting up to 12 people that might not have sufficient parking on site or any parking at all. So there might be amenity issues due to the scale.
Thank you. Councillors, questions? Statements. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the issue with short-term rental accommodation and development approvals is that, unlike most other DAs, it's not obvious that anything is going to happen. Most DAs would involve some sort of construction. There may be a block next door that's been vacant for a long time, and the local residents would be well aware that something is going to be happening and are on alert for that. With the short-term rental accommodation, nothing is obvious. One day, suddenly, people are starting to turn up, and there's been no warning, no advanced notice that anything is changing. And that's why I think that this is appropriate to require advertising so that neighbouring residents actually get alerted that something is going to change, even if there aren't going to be trucks turning up. And that's why I'd support this amendment.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll take that as a speaker in support of, I think you confirmed that you were speaking in support. Are there any other speakers against the amendment? I'll take a speaker for. Councillor Johnston, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Mayor. Look, this only applies to unhosted short-term rental accommodation over a 90-night period within 12 months of their registration. So it's not applying to short-term accommodation that's less than 90 days in that 12-month period. Is that correct?
Ms. Petrovsky?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, thank you. Look, I think, residents, neighbours are well placed to identify potential issues that could occur with this sort of accommodation. It seems reasonable to me that they'd be informed of the application so that they can make comment if they have concerns, that those concerns then can be raised with staff. and staff can then be proactive in dealing with those concerns rather than reactive, and possibly it gives the opportunity to mitigate any likely negative impacts, address neighbours' concerns on that. The other thing I was going to say, the staff burden, I don't think would be particularly significant because, you know, we advertise a number of things. It shouldn't be a massive burden to just be advertising something like that. And it doesn't sound like we have that many of these to be advertising in any event. And yeah, in many cases, I can't imagine that there would be too many complaints if there's no issues. So I think it's quite reasonable that community would be informed and they've got the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor McMullen. Yes, I also support the amendment. I think that it is appropriate that owners are advised of this type of change of use and have the opportunity to comment. Any type of rental accommodation can be problematic. You know, long-term rental can be problematic as short-term rental can be. But I think the main difference with short-term rental accommodation of this nature is the churn. And I think that that is something that neighbours and residents nearby should be advised of and have the opportunity to comment on going forward. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Powell, there's no pressure. I'm not going to debate it. Did you want to speak to it? I've just got one more question, but we haven't heard from you. Not that I'm trying to extend the debate.
No, Mayor. Look, I think the comments that have been already made probably cover my position fairly well as well, you know, supporting the amendment. I don't think it's a huge number that we're dealing with, and I do think that, you know, it's a reasonable proposition. So I don't really have anything further to add.
Thank you. Almost a speech in support. But before I call the vote, I just want to ask one more question, Ms. Krachowski. I understand most short-term rental accommodations are potentially going to have adverse impacts and may be advertised under the current policy. So I suppose that's the starting proposition. But this only applies to, like came out in Councillor Johnston's debate, properties that are going to be available for 90 months or more, not 90 nights or more in a 12-month period. So if I take, I suppose, the fact that you could put your property on Airbnb for 89 nights in any case and overlay that with the policy that already exists, how many properties are really affected by all this, by the difference between what's already in the policy and what will be putting through via the amendment if carried? I'm not suggesting I support or don't support it, but I just want to know how many properties we're really talking about and if there's really any practical significance either way.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor. So if all of the applications for all of our unhosted properties were to become new applications over 90 days, we would have 121 properties out for advertising potentially in a very short period of time. That's significantly more than we would likely advertise in any 1 year through all development applications. Yeah, 121 that we know of at the moment, if they all were to apply.
And just roughly how many would you require to be advertised under the current policy position if, or sorry, was that the number? Or is that what you would have to advertise if the amendment's carried?
That's if the amendment was carried. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the number is because it will depend on the nature and the scale of the application that comes in. So if they're having less than 6 people in there, there might be an argument to say, well, that's what you can have in an ordinary house anyway, so you might not need to advertise. But at the moment, currently 6 occupants is exempt, and it's probably a likely position that we take that they may not need to be advertised if they were to put an application in. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that exact number because under the D, it's a discretionary. It's likely to be, I wouldn't be able to, just pull a number out of my head, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I think we've finished the debate. We don't close, we don't ask the mover to close. I'll simply call the vote on the amendment by show of hands. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. Okay, the amendment is carried 7-1. We've got 8 elected members here this evening. So we move on with C1 as amended. We've had a mover and a seconder. I'll take debate for or against the amended motion from this point, or we can simply ask the mover to close. Councillor Kosovich, as mover, did you want to close? Great, I'll call the vote on C1. All those in favour? Great, the motion's carried unanimously. So what that means for those watching is that the motion was carried unanimously by Council with the inclusion of the amendment submitted by Councillor Burns, which means that all applications of the nature discussed will be advertised. Okay, C2 was part of the en bloc vote relating to electricity supply for contestable sites. So what that brings us to is C3. It's only in the items for discussion this evening because an absolute majority is required, C3, relating to the 2025 local government ordinary elections. We've got the officer recommendation in respect of who we might appoint to conduct the elections. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor White, thank you, and Councillor O'Connor. Councillor White.
I'm not sure I really think there's a significant argument to be put to it, to be honest. I'm happy to go with the staff's recommendations on the basis of what they've presented.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Member. And then similarly, I don't really have anything significant to say other than the Electoral Commissioner and postal election both seem sensible options.
Okay, there's not a lot left to debate, but if anyone did want to speak to the item, I'll hear from you. But in the circumstance, Councillor Burns, for or against?
Against, but I'm going to vote for.
Nothing's ever simple, is it?
I've traditionally always voted against this because I actually like the old system of showing up in person and the meet and greets at voting booths, but I'm going to move away from that and vote for it. But I'm still going to speak my piece about what I favour. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak against, although they're going to vote for? Okay, I think I'll call a vote. There's probably not a lot to close on either. All those in favour? All right, that is carried unanimously also. Thank you. C4, the 2024 annual electors meeting. There's a staff recommendation and an amendment that I've submitted, which is why C4 hasn't formed part of the en bloc vote. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Powell, thank you. Seconder to get it on the table, Councillor Kosovich, thank you for that. Does the mover want to speak to the item, Councillor Powell?
No, Mayor. I just wanted to get it on the table so the amendment can also be progressed.
Councillor Kosovich. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, usually I give you a heads up when I'm going to vacate the chair, but I might do so tonight as well and ask you to preside over the debate over the amendment, just in case there's any discussion and you need to control everyone.
Going well. Right. Mayor, are you moving?
I will.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Okay. Councillor Jones, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. So look, this amendment has come about, prompted, I think, by questioning that came out of the agenda briefing forum. So thank you to the councillors who I suppose drove that. And look, I know Councillor White submitted a proposed amendment as well, which didn't end up getting moved this evening because I went ahead and submitted one also. But I think that the thinking is the same, and that is essentially that there was some improvement that could have been made to the expression in the officer recommendation. I think it's important, as I hope comes out from the amendment, that where an elector has made the trouble to attend a meeting and ask a question that is a bona fide question, they're not there to rock any boats or cause any dramas, that if they've asked a question, or in this case proposed an amendment at an electors meeting, we need to show that we have given it appropriate consideration. And I think the information in the officer report already did that if you bothered to read through it. But the problem with what we were asked to resolve was that at first glance it might have seemed like we were going to note the motion and do nothing else with it. But I think the reality is a lot of staff and consultant time went into an analysis of the Easy Park app, not only before launch, but certainly after the launch, because anyone who used it, including any elected member, would know that there were things that could have been improved upon launch. And I think every elected member would remember the spreadsheets and the tables that were being kept by staff in conjunction with Easy Park of the things that could have been improved, and one by one they worked through that spreadsheet. So what I think the electors' motion did was highlight that there may be some people who don't have visibility of what's occurred, and that's why I think there is value in the electors' motion, but also value in the officer report as written. And that's why I wasn't wanting to see staff put any more work into writing a further report, because the work's already been done, and as far as I could see, the report writing's already occurred. But the point is, we need to put it front and centre in front of anyone who reads the minutes of this meeting that we have given the electors' motion proper consideration. And I just caveat those earlier comments by saying we're all nine of us live in Subiaco. We use the app. We know what's good about it. We know what's not so good about it. And there is a recognition in the amendment, which I wouldn't have necessarily gone for if the staff report didn't bring up the digital transformation, but that there are learnings to get from the rollout of e-permits. And given the expenditure we've invested and the resources we've committed to the citywide digital transformation, I think it's the expectation of every elected member that the digital transformation will be a very different user experience to what the digital permits rollout was. And it's only through trying things like the e-permits rollout that we learn what works for our community, what doesn't, and we build on that to give people the best possible experiences. So I hope that my amendment tidies things up, and as a result, you'll be happy to note and accept what occurred at the electors' meeting. but I'll be happy to hear the debate on the amendment and any subsequent debate on the substantive motion. Thank you.
Sorry. Yep. Councillor Jones to speak.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to add to what the Mayor's been saying, and that I really appreciate point 4 that's been put down, thanking the elector for submitting the motion. We don't get many people coming along to the electors' meetings, and I think it's worth recognising the people that do take the time to come along and be part of the democratic process.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Okay, I'll put the... sorry? Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Johnson, please forgive.
Thank you. Just a question. The Mayor referred to it being an app. Am I missing that? Because I haven't come across an app for digital permits.
Well, I think the technical, if I may answer that, I think the technical term for this type of software package would be a progressive web application, which means that it's essentially an app hosted in the online environment, but you don't install any software yourself. So I use the term app as a term of convenience, but if someone who knows more than I do can answer that, and sorry, I realise I'm not in the chair, so I'll back away, but I thought as the person who wrote the amendment, I might be able to clarify what I was speaking to.
Any takers to clarify that? CEO?
I think it was a pretty good explanation. It's not unusual for things to appear as apps, and they may not be. They may simply just be a web browser, but you click on. So it's quite often to use those terms interchangeably. And so in the digital experience, with the Technology One solution that we've rolled out, they're actually not apps. They're just basically web browsers that appear to be an app.
Yeah, look, thank you for that. Another question, because, you know, everyone's sort of referring to the digital transformation. My understanding is that's quite separate to the digital permits, and I'm not sure how they will fit together. Maybe someone could elaborate on that and give us an indication of what further improvements the community can expect for the digital parking permits, because, you know, clearly it is an issue for the community to put this amendment forward, or to put this motion forward. Thank you.
I might start and then I'll hand over. So yes, they're two different things. So, but what we have done, and I think what's been described within the report and this, is that in the digital transformation project, we call it GINDA internally, that is rolling out the Technology One solutions for planning, building, health, requests, all those elements that currently you click onto different applications, so it'll be within one system. But what we did do is, as part of the evaluation and of this phase 2 and putting into place how we roll this out for the community, we did look at what happened and how we actually deployed the permit system. So that's the first thing. So that's gone into a range of things that we've incorporated, including using a number of other people to actually do some analysis on each of the types of requests or building or planning applications, etc. So we've done a lot more extensive testing from people ordinarily that wouldn't use the system. So that's the first bit that's sort of described. And then secondly, the updates that have been provided, and I think it's suggested that we provide another update to what we did this time last year, is around all those improvements that have already been implemented to date. And there is still a list of those things that ideally we would like seen. And seeing as Easy Park, who are the provider, they've given us some indication that over time they'll continue to improve the app because they're seeking to expand it to other users. But is there anything else?
Maybe just, sorry, Chris, just to run with
Chris is here, so he's the person that talks to the supplier. So if it's okay, I'll hand over to Chris.
Thank you, and through you. Look, as Colin suggested, there are a lot of improvements that are continually coming through the Easy Park e-permit system, and that is ongoing. And that, as I said before, that's going to be that's based largely on the feedback that we're providing, the community's providing, but not just the Subiaco community, all the other communities that are using that e-permit application around Australia and globally as well. So, all those improvements are being rolled out on a weekly and a monthly basis. Some will be quite big, some will be quite small. In terms of what we can expect, what we're always kind of focusing on from a Subiaco perspective is basically enhancing the user experience. And some of those things are going to be small little, adjustments. Some of those might be bigger adjustments. Probably one of the bigger improvements to come our way with the e-permit system is the improvement of the reapplication process, whereas beforehand it was a very onerous paper-based system. It's going to be a lot more easier to actually reapply or just apply for permits, essentially. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I would just like to endorse thanking the elector for bringing this motion. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to support the amendment. I think, like Councillor Jones, I think it's great to see that electors have come and put this motion in terms of expressing constructively some information they'd like. I mean, I guess unbeknownst to them, there is no need as such as for an investigation because we have been receiving updates about this process as time's gone on. And I think it just highlights the importance of public facing as much as we can with this. And I know there has been a communication strategy to get out key messages and frequently ask question responses, and etc., which I think is a good thing. To me, what's really critical as a lesson for us, not that we've done anything wrong at all, but for me, what I read when I see this motion is that there's an emphasis on the user experience and the user interface. And I think this is a lesson for the digitization process that we're going through, because when the public see this, they often see a digital transformation process as something that serves the administration more than it serves them. It's a cost-cutting mechanism for more efficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. It reduces time and cost for the administration, and yet it's more burdensome on them in terms of this. And I think as much as possible, as we need to ensure that we are highlighting in our messaging and everything that's going on in this process, that we are very focused on the user and their experience and their interface with this system. And so for that reason, I think it's important that we do have outwardly focused messaging around this, which provides this sort of update. So yeah, thank you.
Any other speakers before I call the vote on the amendment? Right, I'll call the vote. Those in favour of the amendment, hands. That's unanimous. So, and I'll hand back to the Mayor to complete the agenda item.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So there's a chance for any councillors who wish to debate the amended motion, or we can go straight to the vote at this point. Does anyone want to speak to the amended version of C4? Okay, I take it the mover probably doesn't need to close in this instance. I'll call the vote. All those in favour of C4 as amended? Thank you, councillors. That's carried 8-0 unanimously, so thank you for that debate. We'll move on now to item C5, the self-supporting loan for the Western Metropolitan Regional Council. This requires an absolute majority. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor O'Connor moving, thank you, and Councillor Kosovich seconding. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor McMullen. The removal of household waste is one of the most intrinsic functions of local governments and fundamental to the health and well-being of our community. Municipal solid waste is a direct cost to the community. There is not currently any commercial revenue to offset the cost of collecting, aggregating, hauling and disposing of the general waste we all create. The WMRC was established with the aim of working to at least reduce the cost of dealing with our waste through efficiencies of scale. The City of Subiaco is one of the 5 member councils of WMRC, and we have a 33.33% financial stake in ensuring it continues to function effectively and efficiently. The cost of dealing with our waste is passed on to our community as a unit cost per household, so the more that WMRC can do to keep costs down, the better it is for all members and all households. The silo system at the Brockway transfer station has been in operation there for the past 30 years and either needs significant repair and refurbishment or replacement. Both are costly exercises. However, the silo system is no longer the most efficient. Retaining the silos would also mean continuing to use a system that is inherently more risky to operate because it involves working at height and manoeuvring the silos from the vertical position that they are in for storage to the horizontal for transportation. Transferring away from the silo system to one based on compaction will be a more efficient use of the existing compactor at the Brockway transfer station, which is currently used for FOGO. Moving away from the silos, which require specially modified trucks for transportation, has also enabled WMRC to look at bringing haulage in-house rather than using external contractors. Both the move to compaction and in-house haulage will be more efficient than the current silo system. The nature of the establishment of WMRC makes financing this project through the WA Treasury Corporation more challenging than it would be for a local council, which is why the proposal is for the City of Subiaco to provide the loan by borrowing itself from the WATC. While there are risks inherent in any loan arrangement, the WMRC has provided a strong business case to support its proposal, which includes details of its capacity to repay the loan to the City. This in turn is supported in its most recently audited financial statements. It's in the interests of the City of Subiaco and our residents to support WMRC in making this important transition to a more modern and safer approach to waste disposal. I therefore support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. WMRC has reached out to its largest stakeholder for $750,000, a loan of $750,000 over a fixed 7-year time for the purpose of undertaking capital improvements to its outdated 30-year-old silo-based recycling centre, along with the $500,000 drawdown from WMRC reserves for a total investment of $1.25 million in capital assets improvements. Specifically, these funds will be utilised to purchase a second-hand prime mover and 2 semi-trailers to optimise compaction and haulage of waste to and from the facility. This, among other things, will greatly improve operational safety for on-site employees and will ultimately lead to a reduction in waste haulage costs, with significant efficiencies gains achieved through these savings. Currently, waste haulage costs $36 per tonne, and as a direct result of the purchase of the new assets, it will come down to $22 per tonne. These savings will be passed on and will directly benefit members of municipalities and ratepayers in the western suburbs. The least complicated way to achieve those ends is through a loan with the West Australian Treasury Corporation via the City of Subiaco. The only real critical concession here is WMRC's ability to service the debt and repay or renew the loan over the 7-year term. We are reliably advised that WMRC is financially sound and will have no difficulty meeting their financial obligations in that regard. Accordingly, I support the approval of the loan, effectively from the City of Subiaco to Western Metropolitan Regional Council to enable the capital asset improvements to be realised at the recycling centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kosovich. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor O'Connor, anything to close on? I'll call the vote then. All those in favour of C5? Thank you, councillors. That is also carried unanimously. Items C6 and C7 were carried earlier as part of the en bloc. There was an elected member motion submitted, but I understand the submitter will no longer proceed with that. That was Councillor Burns, so sorry, Lloyd. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. There's no business of an urgent nature that has been brought to my attention. Therefore, I assume there is none. There's no confidential items either. I therefore declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 18th of February 2025 closed at 6:21 p.m. Thank you everyone for your contributions.